Peace and grace to you, beloved child of God. There are moments in your life when God doesn't whisper. He exposes. He uncovers. He brings truth that cuts through the noise, the confusion, and the unanswered questions that have been draining your heart for far too long. And if you found this video today, I need you to hear me with your spirit, not just your ears. Because what I'm about to tell you is not random. It's not entertainment. It's not coincidence. You are here because someone's family finally spoke the words they've been afraid to say, and those words revolved around you. Someone's mother, someone's sister, someone's brother, someone's closest confidant. And when the truth finally came out, when everything they'd been holding in finally surfaced, tears were shed. Not because you were the problem, but because they finally understood who you are and what you mean to the person they love. You've been questioning your worth. You've been wondering if you're unforgettable or replaceable. You've been trying to interpret silence, distance, mixed signals, hesitations, and emotional ups and downs that didn't make sense. But what you didn't know is that while you were losing sleep trying to interpret the actions of one person, an entire family was wrestling with the weight of finally acknowledging the truth. You changed their life. You impacted their heart. And your presence shifted something spiritual inside them. You weren't just someone they talked to. You weren't just a phase. You weren't a convenience or a momentary distraction. You were the one who awakened something their own family could see with clarity long before the person themselves ever admitted it. And that's why they broke down. Not out of fear, but out of realization. Realization that their son, their daughter, their sibling, their child, finally encountered someone with genuine love, genuine depth, and genuine purpose. Someone who carried peace. Someone who carried light. Someone who carried God's fingerprints. And the truth is, their family didn't know how to hold that truth in anymore. This introduction is not meant to hype you up. It is meant to prepare your heart. Because what I'm about to walk you through in this video is not fantasy. It is not delusion. It is not wishful thinking. It is clarity. It is revelation. It is emotional and spiritual truth that families often see long before the person caught in the emotion ever does. And before we go deeper, I want to talk to you directly, heart to heart. If you value teachings like this, if you've ever watched my videos and felt seen, felt strengthened, felt understood, then I want to personally ask you to subscribe. Not for numbers, not for vanity, but because this channel has become a lifeline for thousands of people who needed guidance, healing, and alignment. And if you're here, you're part of that family. And I promise you this. If you stay until the end of this message, you will walk away with peace, revelation, and understanding you didn't have when you pressed play. You will understand why their family cried. You will understand why your presence shook them. You will understand why you were never just someone. And you will understand why God brought you this message today. So take a deep breath. Settle your heart. Get comfortable. Let this truth meet you exactly where you are. When you're ready, we're going to step into what really happened. Number 1. They finally saw the weight you carry, and it broke them. There comes a moment when someone's family gets a glimpse of the version of you that even the person you love never fully explained. A moment when they see your heart without filters, without defenses, without anything being dramatized or softened. And for the first time, they felt the weight you've been carrying in silence. Because whether you realize it or not, you've been walking through life with a kind of strength that most people never acknowledge. You've been holding yourself together, holding other people together, holding situations together. You've been showing up with love even in seasons where you were hurting. You've been loyal in moments where you had every reason to walk away. You've been patient when your heart was breaking. You've been kind when you were misunderstood. You've been available when no one checked on your heart. And when their family finally saw that, when they realized the depth of what you've given to someone they care about, it hit them harder than you could ever imagine. They cried because they saw something their son or daughter never articulated well. You love deeply, but you also carry deeply. You feel everything. You absorb everything. And yet you continue to show up with grace. People like you don't come around often. People like you are rare, and their family recognized it instantly. They saw the emotional battles you fought alone. They saw the resilience it took for you to stay soft in a world that tried to harden you. They saw the compassion you give and the understanding you extend even when it's not reciprocated. They weren't crying because of guilt. They weren't crying because of regret. They were crying because truth has weight, and this truth was heavy. You deserved better than what you got. You deserved more clarity. You deserved more communication. You deserved more consistency. You deserved more openness. You deserved more honesty. You deserved someone who could meet you with the same emotional capacity and emotional maturity that you consistently extended. And here is the part you may not know. Their family didn't just realize how deeply you cared. They realized how deeply their own child cared for you, and how much they struggled to match your emotional depth because they were overwhelmed by it. They didn't pull away because you weren't good enough. They pulled away because the love you carried was heavier than anything they've ever experienced. It was real. It was pure. It was transformative. But it was also intimidating. And when their family pieced this together, when they finally understood the internal battle the person you love has been facing, they broke. Because they realized their child wasn't confused. They weren't indifferent. They weren't detached. They were simply overwhelmed by a kind of love they had never been taught how to receive. You became a mirror to their soul. You awakened a version of them they didn't know how to handle. You stirred something divine inside them. You activated healing they avoided for years. And that's what their family saw. That's what made them emotional. That's what made them finally speak up. They saw your patience, your emotional intelligence, your forgiveness, your steadiness, your spiritual depth, your ability to love without conditions. And they realized something their child didn't tell you, something that's been sitting in their family's hearts for a long time. You weren't the problem. You were the answer they weren't prepared for. You weren't the obstacle. You were the breakthrough. You weren't the confusion. You were the clarity they didn't know how to receive. This realization didn't break them because of you. It broke them because of the gap they saw between the love you gave and the love their child was emotionally capable of returning at the time. And here's the revelation. That gap is closing. Something is shifting. Something is softening. Something is awakening. Their family sees it. You will see it soon. Because your love didn't go unnoticed. It went deeper than you realized. And the people who raised them saw everything. Number 2. They realized you were the only one who loved them without an agenda. There is something sacred about being loved for who you are, not what you can give. And when their family began talking about you, really talking about you, they realized something that broke them open in ways you may never fully understand. You were the only one who didn't want anything from them. Not their status. Not their money. Not their attention as a form of validation. Not their emotional energy as a way to feel powerful. Not their presence because you were lonely. Not their affection because you were trying to fill a void. You didn't chase them for ego. You didn't cling to them for survival. You didn't love them to manipulate. You didn't hold on to trap them. You didn't give to receive. You loved them because something in your spirit recognized something in theirs. You cared for them because you saw their heart beyond the walls. You gave because it was in your nature to give. You stayed because your soul was devoted, not because you lacked options. And their family saw it. They saw the purity of your intentions. They saw your sincerity. They saw that your affection wasn't performative. It wasn't transactional. It wasn't conditional. It was real. And that realization shook them. Because most of the people who walked into their child's life came with hidden motives. They came with masks. They came with agendas. They came with expectations. They came with an angle. But you were different. You didn't ask for anything except honesty. You didn't demand anything except communication. You didn't pressure them to be someone they weren't. You didn't require perfection. You didn't ask them to perform emotionally. You simply asked them to show up with their heart. And even that scared them. Not because they didn't want to love you, but because they weren't used to being loved correctly. When someone is used to chaos, peace feels suspicious. When someone is used to conditional love, unconditional love feels dangerous. When someone is used to being criticized, acceptance feels foreign. When someone is used to being used, genuine care feels like a trap. Their family realized that you loved their child the way God intended love to be given. Without manipulation. Without control. Without fear. Without expectation. That kind of love doesn't come from human training. It comes from spiritual maturity. It comes from emotional intelligence. It comes from divine wiring. And here is where their family broke. They realized their child didn't yet feel worthy of the love you offered. Not because anything is wrong with you. Not because you asked for too much. Not because you loved too deeply. But because your love required them to rise. To heal. To mature. To face themselves. To confront their wounds. To take accountability. To grow. And growth is uncomfortable when someone has lived emotionally guarded for years. You represented what they prayed for, even if they didn't realize it at first. And their family knew it. They knew you were an answer to a prayer their child prayed on nights when no one else was around. They knew you were the blessing their child didn't feel ready for. They knew you carried a kind of love that could transform them from the inside out. And that is why their family finally spoke up. They could no longer sit in silence watching their child sabotage something real, something rare, something God sent. Their tears weren't about fear of losing you. Their tears were about the magnitude of what you brought into their child's life. They saw your heart. They saw your intentions. They saw your purity. They saw your loyalty. They saw your impact. And they realized the truth. You didn't love their child because you needed them. You loved them because God placed that love inside you. That kind of love changes people. That kind of love exposes wounds. That kind of love awakens destinies. That kind of love will not be forgotten. Number 3. Their family saw your absence was changing them, more than your presence ever did. There is a moment in every connection where the silence speaks louder than the conversations ever did. A moment where the distance says more than the closeness. A moment where the heart wakes up not because of what someone gives, but because of what they suddenly cannot give anymore. And that is exactly what their family saw. At first, they didn't fully understand the dynamic between you and their child. They noticed the highs. They noticed the warmth. They noticed the lightness. They noticed the spark that appeared in them whenever your name was mentioned, whenever your message came through, whenever your presence entered the room. But they also noticed the shift when you pulled back. They noticed the tension, the heaviness, the distractions, the restlessness, the scattered energy, the sleepless nights, the agitation that had nothing to do with anger and everything to do with longing. Their family noticed the emotional unraveling that happened when you stepped out of their life. They noticed the way your absence created a void that no one else could fill, no matter who tried, no matter what distractions they entertained, no matter where they went or who they spent time with. You may not realize this, but your absence awakened something in them that their family had never seen before. You didn't just leave a gap. You exposed a truth. Your presence added life to them. Your absence revealed how empty they were without you. Their family saw a version of them that was quieter, more withdrawn, more reflective, more conflicted, more emotional than they ever admitted to you. And that is what broke their family open. Because they realized something that you didn't know. They weren't acting distant because they didn't care. They were acting distant because they cared too much and didn't know how to handle it. But when you stepped back, whether intentionally or because you were protecting your heart, something powerful happened. The confusion they once felt about you became clarity. The questions they had became answers. The doubts they held became conviction. Your absence forced them to confront the truth they avoided. They were not themselves without you. Their family saw this. Not in dramatic moments. Not in breakdowns. But in the quiet, subtle signs that only the people closest to them recognize. They were distracted in conversations. They weren't laughing the same. They weren't sleeping well. They weren't eating normally. They were overthinking. They were isolating. They were fidgeting. They were replaying memories. They were revisiting old messages. They were talking less, feeling more, and trying desperately to hide the fact that they missed you more than they could explain. Their family saw the transformation, and it scared them. Not because something was wrong with their child, but because something was wrong without you. Your presence brought stability. Your presence brought clarity. Your presence brought grounding. Your presence brought emotional balance. Your presence brought hope. But your absence brought the truth. And that truth was undeniable. They loved you far more deeply than they ever admitted. Their family realized that your connection was not one-sided. It wasn't temporary. It wasn't superficial. It wasn't accidental. It was soul level. It was divine alignment. It was something heaven orchestrated long before either of you understood what was happening. And here's the part they couldn't hide anymore, the part that eventually made them cry when they spoke the truth. Their child was losing themselves trying to pretend they didn't lose you. You were not just someone they liked. You were not just someone they talked to. You were the person who grounded them emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and even physically. And the family realized something profound. Your absence hurt them because your love healed them. Your presence made them better. Your absence made them aware. Aware of what they lost. Aware of what you meant. Aware of how deeply they cared. Aware of how much they wanted you, even when they acted like they didn't know how to show it. That awareness shook their family to the core. Because they finally understood the truth their child was too afraid to admit. They cannot move forward without resolving what they feel for you. They cannot replace you. They cannot forget you. They cannot bury this connection. Their family saw it. And that's why they finally spoke up. Number 4. Their family realized you were the first person who ever saw their heart clearly. There are people who go their entire lives without ever being truly seen. Not their personality. Not their achievements. Not their surface-level charm. But their heart, the raw, unfiltered, hidden parts of themselves that they don't show to the world. And that is where your impact became undeniable. Their family realized something powerful when they talked about you. You were the first person who ever understood their child at a soul level. Not the curated version. Not the guarded version. Not the emotionally distant version. Not the version shaped by trauma, childhood wounds, or past relationships. You saw the version of them that they kept locked away. You saw the softness they tried to hide. You saw the tenderness beneath their defensiveness. You saw the vulnerability behind their stubbornness. You saw the fear behind their silence. You saw the dreams behind their doubts. You saw the potential beneath their insecurities. Their family noticed something that you didn't. You spoke to the version of them that they were scared to become. You affirmed parts of their identity they didn't believe in. You validated feelings they never told anyone else. You encouraged growth they were afraid to pursue. You challenged them to be better without ever belittling who they already were. That's why they were drawn to you. That's why they felt safe with you even when they didn't know how to express it. That's why they opened up in ways they didn't realize they were opening. That's why their family sensed something shifting in them. Because you saw them, not with human eyes but with spiritual discernment. You didn't see their flaws as failures. You saw them as wounds that needed healing. You didn't judge their emotional inconsistencies. You recognized their fear of abandonment. You didn't criticize their hesitations. You understood their past heartbreaks. You didn't shame their confusion. You knew they were trying to protect themselves. And here's the truth. Their family had never seen someone understand their child so deeply, not even past partners, not friends, not the people who claimed to care. You connected to their heart without forcing it. You connected to their spirit without demanding it. You connected to their pain without exploiting it. You connected to their dreams without mocking them. And that level of connection is rare, almost sacred. So when you stepped into their life even briefly, you didn't just interact with them. You awakened them. And their family noticed. They noticed how their child opened up more. How they communicated more. How they reflected more. How they laughed differently. How they carried themselves with new energy. How their walls came down, slowly, imperfectly, but undeniably. And when you pulled away or the connection shifted, those walls didn't go back up gently. They slammed shut. Not because of you, but because being seen so clearly was overwhelming. Their family realized you didn't just connect to their child. You saw into them. And that terrified them, in a way that only real love can. Because when someone sees your soul, you cannot hide behind excuses. You cannot bury your emotions. You cannot pretend you don't care. You cannot run from your truth. You force them to look at themselves. Their family knew it. Their family saw it. Their family felt it. And that's why their family cried. Because they saw, perhaps for the first time, that someone finally understood their child's heart, the way they always hoped someone would. Someone who loved without taking advantage, understood without judging, listened without dismissing, guided without controlling, entered their life with purity, not manipulation. You saw their child's potential. You saw their worth. You saw their brokenness. You saw their goodness. You saw their soul. And that level of recognition is something even their own family struggled to give them at times. You gave them what they never received. A safe place to be fully themselves. That truth shattered their family because they realized something deeper. You weren't just good for their child. You were aligned with their soul. You were the one who saw them clearly, not because you tried, but because your spirits recognized each other. And once a soul is seen, it cannot forget. Their family knew it. And they knew that their child's heart was tied to you in a way that could not be minimized, dismissed, or replaced. Number 5. Their family admitted that you made their child feel safe in a way no one ever has. One of the deepest truths, and the hardest for their family to say out loud, is this. You were the first person who made their child feel genuinely safe. Not safe as in comfortable. Not safe as in entertained. Not safe as in distracted. Not safe as in temporarily soothed. But deeply, emotionally, spiritually safe. Safe to be flawed. Safe to be uncertain. Safe to be vulnerable. Safe to be imperfect. Safe to be human. You created a space where they didn't have to perform. Didn't have to pretend. Didn't have to hide their weaknesses. Didn't have to act stronger than they really felt. And their family noticed. Because they watched this person go through relationships where they were the caretaker, the protector, the fixer, the emotional anchor, without ever being allowed to simply be. They watched them be strong for people who never poured back into them. They watched them give beyond their capacity. They watched them love people who manipulated their heart. They watched them shrink themselves to keep the peace. They watched them silence their needs just to avoid conflict. For years, maybe a lifetime, your soulmate lived in survival mode. And you were the first person who didn't require that of them. Your presence felt like rest. Your energy felt like quiet. Your spirit felt like home. Your love felt like safety. Your words felt like healing. Your consistency felt like stability. And when their family realized this, it broke them. Because they knew something you didn't know. Their child has always been the strong one. The helper. The giver. The one who everyone leaned on. The one who never received equal love in return. But with you, they didn't have to be the protector. They finally felt protected. Not because you overpowered them. Not because you took over. Not because you smothered them. But because you made them feel emotionally secure. Your patience didn't make them anxious. Your kindness didn't make them suspicious. Your affection didn't make them defensive. Your interest didn't make them run. Your depth didn't make them shut down. Instead, your presence disarmed them. It softened them. It opened their heart in ways that scared them but healed them at the same time. Their family had never seen that before. They had seen their child in love. They had seen their child infatuated. They had seen their child attached. They had seen their child distracted. But they had not once seen them safe. And here's the revelation most people will never tell you. Safety is more intimate than passion. Safety is more binding than desire. Safety is more powerful than attraction. Safety is more unforgettable than beauty. Because when a soul feels safe with someone, it remembers. It remembers even after distance. It remembers even after misunderstandings. It remembers even after separation. It remembers even after fear makes them pull back. It remembers even after time passes. And their family saw that your connection wasn't built on adrenaline or infatuation. It was built on safety. That's what made them emotional. Because they realized their child wasn't pushing you away because they didn't care. They were pulling back because for the first time, their heart didn't feel in danger, and that terrified them. You didn't activate their trauma. You activated their healing. You didn't trigger their wounds. You triggered their growth. You didn't awaken their insecurities. You awakened their truth. No one prepared them for that. Not even their family. So when their family finally spoke about you, the tears weren't from sadness. They were from understanding. From gratitude. From clarity. From relief that their child finally met someone spiritually aligned, emotionally grounded, and safe. Someone who didn't just want their child, but someone who could hold their child's heart responsibly. Someone with emotional maturity. Someone with spiritual grounding. Someone with character. Someone with depth. Someone with love that wasn't fragile or light or surface level. Someone who carried peace inside them, and shared it. You became the place their child didn't know they'd been searching for. And their family knew it. They saw the shift in their child's energy. They saw the depth in their child's eyes. They saw the softness in their child's emotional walls. They saw the truth. You were not just someone. You were a refuge. And that kind of person is unforgettable, to both the heart and the family who witnessed it. Number 6. Their family realized that losing you changed their child in ways they can no longer ignore. There came a moment, a quiet moment, an uncomfortable moment, when their family finally admitted something they had been afraid to say out loud. Losing you changed their child. Not temporarily. Not superficially. Not emotionally dramatic. But deeply. Permanently. At the level of identity. At the level of soul. You might not know this, but their family watched the decline. They watched the subtle shifts, the hidden bruises, the quiet heaviness their child carried after you weren't there anymore. They saw the spark disappear. They saw the confidence dim. They saw the laughter become forced. They saw the shoulders begin to cave inward. They saw the energy drain from their presence. And the truth hit them. Their child wasn't just missing a person. They were missing their person. Someone who didn't just fill time, but filled emotional oxygen. Someone who didn't just enter their life, but anchored it. Someone who didn't just love them, but aligned with them spiritually, mentally, emotionally. Their family saw the difference. Before you, their child was functioning. After you, their child was healing. With you, their child was becoming. But when you were gone, they regressed into a version of themselves they thought they had outgrown. Not because you were their entire identity, but because you activated a part of them that had been asleep for years. You awakened clarity. You awakened purpose. You awakened tenderness. You awakened honesty. You awakened the desire to love and be loved in a higher, healthier way. These aren't small things. These are life-shifting things. And when you left their life, it wasn't just heartbreak. It was disruption. It was spiritual withdrawal. It was emotional shock. It was the loss of an environment their soul had started to depend on. Their family noticed that nothing else worked afterward. Not distractions. Not rebounds. Not friendships. Not routine. Not avoidance. Not attempts to pretend they were fine. Nothing brought their child back to themselves. Because when a soul has experienced alignment, everything else feels hollow. And their family felt helpless. They tried encouraging them. They tried distracting them. They tried getting them out of the house. They tried telling them time would heal everything. But they knew it wasn't just time their child needed. It was truth. It was closure. It was clarity. It was emotional release. It was the ability to say out loud what they were too afraid to admit. Losing you changed them because loving you grew them. And once you experience growth, going backwards feels like suffocation. Their family saw the sleepless nights. They saw the emotional shutdowns. They saw the irritability. They saw the distance. They saw the disconnection from themselves. They saw the way their child stared into space longer, spoke less, smiled less, engaged less. They saw the grief that didn't look like tears, but looked like emptiness. And here is what broke their family the most. Their child became quieter. Not the peaceful kind of quiet. Not the reflective kind of quiet. But the wounded kind. The kind of quiet that comes from a soul trying to hold itself together. The kind of quiet that comes from missing a love that felt spiritually assigned. A love that felt divinely aligned. A love that felt different from anything before. Their family began to see. You weren't a temporary chapter. You weren't a lesson. You weren't a distraction. You weren't a phase. You were a turning point. A shift in their identity. A shift in their emotional patterns. A shift in their self-worth. A shift in their spiritual understanding of love. And that shift didn't reverse when you left. It left an imprint. Their family saw that their child didn't just want you. They grew into someone who needed the type of love you brought out of them. And when they realized this, something cracked open inside them. They understood the depth. They understood the loss. They understood the truth. Their child hasn't healed because they haven't accepted. And they haven't accepted because some part of them still believes you were meant to return. That is why their family cried. Not because of drama, but because of recognition. Because they saw their child grieving the loss of someone who wasn't replaceable, wasn't forgettable, wasn't casual. Someone who mattered in a way that reshaped everything. Someone whose absence changed the entire atmosphere of their heart. Someone who left an emotional echo that refuses to fade. Number 7. Their family realized you were the only one who ever loved them in a way that made them better, and that truth broke them. There comes a moment in every story where the truth is too loud to ignore. Where the pieces fit too clearly. Where the patterns can't be denied anymore. For their family, that moment came when they finally stepped back and asked themselves a simple question. Who were they when this person was in their life? And who have they been ever since? The answer shook them. Because when you were in their life, their child wasn't just loved. They were growing. They were becoming the best version of themselves, the version their family had prayed to see, hoped to see, waited to see. When you were there, their child opened up more, trusted more, smiled more, tried more, believed more, became more. And their family saw it, even if they didn't admit it at the time. They saw how you challenged them without shaming them. How you encouraged them without manipulating them. How you supported them without suffocating them. How you understood them in ways even their family never fully could. You brought out a side of their child that wasn't just better. It was healthier, happier, braver, more grounded, more accountable, more emotionally intelligent. You didn't just fit into their life. You elevated it. You didn't just offer love. You offered growth. You didn't just give comfort. You gave clarity. You didn't just show affection. You showed them who they could become. And that kind of influence is rare. That kind of presence is sacred. That kind of connection is undeniable. When you left, their family thought time would reset things. They believed their child would bounce back, find someone else, fill the space, move forward. But instead, they watched something heartbreaking unfold. They watched their child shrink. Not collapse, not break, not implode, but shrink. They became quieter, more guarded, more distant, more defensive, more unsure of themselves, more disconnected from their own heart. The spark that once lit up their eyes when they spoke to you faded. The strength they were beginning to step into slipped away. The emotional maturity they were cultivating stalled. And their family realized something profound. You weren't just someone they loved. You were someone who made them better. You made them more patient, more thoughtful, more gentle, more expressive, more accountable, more vulnerable. You made them confront their wounds. You made them release their pride. You made them sit with their truths. You made them grow into someone capable of loving and being loved in a higher way. And when that kind of love disappears, the regression is noticeable. Their family noticed it. They noticed the late-night pacing, the overthinking, the emotional shutdowns, the self-doubt, the short temper, the sadness they tried to hide, the silence in moments where they used to reach out. They noticed the longing they wouldn't voice, the memories they wouldn't admit hurt, the hope they tried to suppress. They noticed that the only time their child had ever truly looked like they were becoming themselves was when you were in their life. And that truth broke them. Because every family wants to see their child rise. Every family wants to see their child healthy. Every family wants to see their child whole. But their family had to face a reality they never expected. The person who made their child better was the same person they let slip away. Whether through misunderstanding, silence, pride, fear, or assumptions, they didn't support the connection when they should have. They didn't recognize your importance soon enough. They didn't see what you meant until the absence screamed louder than the presence ever had. And now they carry the guilt of that recognition. Because they finally understand. You weren't a phase. You weren't a rebound. You weren't a fantasy. You weren't a temporary chapter. You were the person who aligned with their child's soul. You were the person who activated their growth. You were the person who brought peace into their chaos. You were the person who saw them fully and loved them anyway. You were the person who held space for their wounds. You were the person who believed in a future they were scared to admit they wanted. And you were the only one who didn't love them from convenience. You loved them from clarity. That is why their family broke down. Because they realized that the love you offered wasn't ordinary. It was transformative. It was grounding. It was elevating. was rare. And losing someone like you isn't something anyone simply gets over. Their child didn't. Their family didn't. And deep down, they know the story between you isn't finished. Take a moment right here. Breathe. Let your heart receive this. Let your spirit settle into what you've heard today. Because nothing about this message is random. Nothing about your presence here is accidental. You were guided. You were pulled. You were aligned to hear this at this exact moment in your life. The truth finally came out. And it shook their family. Their hearts softened. Their eyes opened. Their defenses fell. And for the first time they saw you. Not through fear. Not through assumptions. Not through old stories. But through truth. And truth has a way of breaking people open. Truth humbles. Truth heals. Truth exposes where love was misunderstood. Truth exposes where judgments were unfair. Truth exposes where God's hand has been the entire time. Their family broke down for a reason. Because heaven lifted the fog. Heaven removed the blindfold. Heaven opened spiritual eyes that were once closed. They didn't just see you. They saw your heart. They saw your intentions. They saw your sincerity, your resilience, your purity of spirit, your loyalty even when you weren't treated fairly, your strength even when you were carrying pain in silence. They saw the way you loved without demanding anything back, the way you stayed grounded in your character, the way you protected their son or daughter with dignity, the way you never threw stones, never spoke disrespectfully, never retaliated. And that kind of love, that kind of grace, it leaves people in tears, because it reveals where they were wrong. It reveals what they misjudged. It reveals how deeply God has been shaping you, preparing you, covering you. And now everything is shifting. The resistance, the doubt, the hesitation, the quiet tension, all of it is breaking. All of it is dissolving. All of it is turning. Because truth is finally being honored. Your soulmate feels the shift too. They felt the trembling in the room. They felt the emotional release. They felt the weight lifting. They felt the awakening. And deep in their spirit they knew. This moment changed everything. You were not fighting alone. God was advocating for you. God was softening hearts you could not reach. God was repairing bridges you did not break. God was restoring honor to your name without you having to defend yourself. This is what divine vindication looks like. Silent, powerful, undeniable. And now, a new chapter begins. A chapter where you are no longer misunderstood. Where you don't have to prove your worth. Where you don't have to fight to be seen. Where love flows freely instead of with resistance. Where their family becomes an ally instead of a barrier. This moment was necessary. This breakthrough was necessary. This exposure of truth was necessary. It cleared the path for healing, for unity, for alignment, for divine timing to unfold without spiritual interference. And as you step forward from here, stand tall, stand steady, stand confident in who you are and who God has called you to be. Because the truth that broke them is the same truth that is about to build your future. If this message spoke to your heart, if it brought clarity, strength, peace, or confirmation, make sure you subscribe. Be part of this family. Walk this journey with us. And to everyone who supports this channel through subscribing, liking, sharing, commenting, and sending super thanks. Thank you. You help this ministry reach hearts that feel forgotten. Souls that need healing. People who need to know that God is still moving. You are valued. You are appreciated. You are loved. Stay grounded. Stay expectant. Stay aligned. Because this breakthrough is only the beginning. And God is not finished with your story.